All right, welcome. So let's start with our fair game review for this week. And I wanted to take a look at dividing fractions in mixed numbers and subtracting mixed numbers. So remember, when we divide fractions, we really multiply by the reciprocal. So the first thing I have to do is make sure both of these numbers are fractions. So I'm going to use the boomerang method here to convert this mixed number into an improper fraction. So I'm going to multiply 3 times 1, and then I'm going to add 2. So 3 times 1 is 3, 4, 5. So this is really going to be 5/3 divided by, this is already a proper fraction, so we're just going to leave that as 4/5. Okay, now, here's the problem, divide. We have a rule for multiply. So we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. So the first number stays the same, 5/3. Change this to multiplication, and then I'm going to change 4/5 to its reciprocal, which is 5/4. Okay, then when we multiply fractions, we just multiply straight across. Okay, I don't see any cross canceling in there, so 5 times 5 equals 25. 3 times 4 equals 12. And you're welcome to convert this back into a mixed number if you wanted to. 12 goes into 25, 2 and 1/12. Those are both equivalent. Okay? When we subtract, I always recommend to write your numbers vertically instead of horizontally. So we're going to subtract 3 3/4. Okay? And then I start to get to work. So the first thing I need to do is either convert both of these to improper fractions and then find a common denominator, or I can find a common denominator, subtract the fractions, and subtract the whole number separately. So I'm going to find a common denominator between 8ths and 4ths, and I realized it was 8ths. So I'm going to leave 6 and 1/8 alone, but I'm going to change 3 3/4 to 3 and something over 8. I multiplied 4 times 2 to get to 8, so 3 times 2 is 6. Now, I notice I can't really subtract 6 from 1 there because 1 is smaller than 6, so I'm going to borrow. Now, this is the tricky part, okay? This is where I change this to 5 and this to 1 1/8. Well, why did I do that? Well, let's see. What happens when I turn 1 1/8 into an improper fraction? I get the whole number 5. 8 times 1 plus 1 is 9/8 minus 3 and 6/8. Now, the numerator in this fraction is greater than the numerator in this fraction, so I can go ahead and subtract. 9 minus 6 is 3/8. 5 minus 3 is 2. So those are the answers. And I should have put a circle around those and a circle around those. Okay, I'm going to scoot this up. Let's talk about our learning target for today. Okay, our learning target is we will convert fractions, decimals, and percents. Okay, now I'm actually going to show you how to do this 3 different ways, depending on what kind of fraction you're looking at. Now, the word convert is a new vocabulary word, so let's write that down. Convert. And convert just means to change. Okay, so we're going to convert fractions to decimals, but they'll be the same amount. Okay, to convert means to change. All right, so there are 3 types or 3 ways, 3 types, of conversion. Okay, there are 3 types of conversion, and I'm going to show you each of those, starting with my first favorite way. These are all my favorite way, is memory. Okay, memory fractions are ones that you can memorize how to convert those to decimals and percents. For instance, if I asked you what is 1/2 as a decimal or a percent, hopefully you know that's 0.5 and 50%, right? And that's because 1 is half of 2, 0.5 is half of 1, 50% is half of 100%, right? And we know that percents mean per 100 or out of 100, okay? You might even know what 3/4 is. Okay, some of you know that 3/4 changes to 0.75. There are 4 quarters in a dollar. If I had 3 of them, that would be 75 cents. And we know that we can just move the decimal 2 places to get 75%. Okay, those are called memory fractions. Some of you have more memory fractions than others, and that's fine. You can, when you come across a memory fraction, it might be different for you than others, and that's okay. The second strategy I have, these are called BFF fractions. Okay, and I'm going to explain BFF fractions. So BFF, okay, these are fractions that easily convert to hundredths. Okay, and why? Because percent equals out of 100. Okay, so BFF fractions are fractions that easily convert to hundredths. Let me show you. Let's say that I had something like 37 over 50. Okay, if I want to convert this to a decimal, I'm looking at this going, yikes, this is not something that I've memorized. But here's something very cool. Watch. I can use what I know about proportions, and I can say, wait a minute, if percents are out of 100, I want to try to get my fraction to 100. So I'm going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 2 here, and I'm going to say that this is 74 over 100. But listen to what I say. This is 74 hundredths. 74 hundredths. Friends, this sounds exactly like the decimal. 75 hundredths. This is 74 hundredths. So it looks like this, okay? When a fraction is in the hundredths, the decimal and the fraction sound the exact same. 74 hundredths, 74 hundredths. Now, we can easily convert that to a percent because we move the decimal over 2 places. We multiply by 100 because percents are out of 100, and I get 74%. Okay? What if I had 9 20ths? Again, this is a BFF fraction because 20 is a factor of 100. As a matter of fact, if I multiply 20 by 5, I get 100. So I'm going to multiply 9 by 5 and get 45. Okay? Now, listen to what this says. 45 hundredths. 45 hundredths. It's a fraction. It's a decimal. They sound the same. So I know this is equal to 45 hundredths. How do I convert that to a percent? Easy. I move the decimal over 2 places and I get 45%. Okay? Now, again, just because I said it's a BFF fraction, sometimes you might not realize it's a BFF fraction, and that's okay. This only works for things you've memorized. This only works for things that you know are BFF fractions. So let me show you one more way that works for all fractions, okay? So when all else fails, if it's not a memory fraction and it's not a BFF fraction, and I need to convert a fraction to a decimal or a percent, okay, you can use division. Okay? Now, I want you to write this. Always works. Okay? For all fractions. Okay? So, you can convert any fraction to a decimal by dividing the numerator by the denominator. Okay, so you can convert any fraction to a decimal by dividing the numerator by the denominator. Okay, so this is when you're looking at a fraction that looks a little messier. Okay, so let's see. If I had something like 5/19 and I wanted to convert this to a decimal, I wanted to know if I have 19 total equal pieces, but I only have 5 of them, what decimal is that? We're gonna have to divide. And remember, this is the numerator and this is the denominator. So we're actually gonna do 5 divided by 19, okay? Now here's my trick. I always add a decimal and 3 zeros so that I can round to the nearest hundredth because percents are out of 100, okay? You can also put this in your calculator. I'm gonna kick up my decimal. I know that 19 goes into 52 times. 2 times 19 is 38. Subtract and get 12. Bring down the 0. Okay. I know that 19 goes into 126 times. 6 times 19, I believe, is 114. Subtract and get 6. Bring down the 0. And then I believe 19 goes into 60 3 times, because 3 times 19, let's see, that would be 19 times 3, be a 7, 40, no, that's not right. Sorry, 9, that'd be a 2, so 3, 57. There we go. So 57, subtract and get 3. So that means this is equal to, and it's roughly, because we know that it would keep going, 263 thousandths, okay? Now the reason why I go into the thousands is so I can round to the hundredths place, which would be 26 hundredths. Now, when we convert then the decimal to a percent, I'm going to move the decimal over 2 places because I'm going to multiply by 100, and that's going to give this one to be 26.3%, or if I move it over here, 26%, okay? And we'll accept either answer there. Okay, so these are the ways that you can convert fractions to decimals and percents, okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a table, and we're going to do what happens if I want to go from a decimal to a fraction. Okay, so we're going to create a table. I'm going all the way down on my paper. And we're going to go fractions, decimals, and percents. Okay, and remember, percent means per 100 or for every 100, okay? Okay, so we're going to start with a fraction that we might not know yet, but we're going to write this down as 5/8, okay? Now, some of you might know this as a memory fraction. It's definitely not a BFF fraction, so what I would do is use division, okay? Now, if you were to put this in your calculator, you would write this as 5 divided by 8. So put that in your calculator, 5 divided by 8, okay? When you did that, the decimal you got was 0.625 or 625 thousandths, okay? You can leave it like this. If you leave it like this and you want to convert it to a decimal, you move the decimal over 2 places and you get 62.5%. That means 5/8 is equal to 0.625 or 625 thousandths. 5/8 is equal to 62.5%. Okay, so that's what part of 8/5, or what part of 8/5 is. Okay, now if you want, you can go ahead and round this. If you do, and you look at the 2, The 5 tells the 2. Remember, 5 or above, give the underlined number a shove. It would be 63 hundredths, which converts to 63%. Okay? Right, let's take a look at another number. What if I started with a decimal and I said this number here? Okay? In order to go back and forth, we know that we can go from a decimal to a percent by moving the decimal 2 places to the right. So it would be 71%. Okay? But also, let's say this number out loud. 71 hundredths. 71 hundredths. 71 hundredths. It's a fraction. It's a decimal. I can just rewrite this as 71 hundredths. 71 hundredths, 71 hundredths. Also, percents are out of 100. So if I have 71 out of 100, I have 71%. All right, let's keep going. What if I started with a decimal, okay, but it had 3 digits, like 347 thousandths, 347 thousandths, okay? I know to go to a percent, I'm going to move the decimal 2 places to the right, which gives me 34 and 7/10%, or 34.7%. But again, say this number out loud. 347 thousandths. 347 thousandths. It's a fraction. It's a decimal. They're the same. 347 thousandths. Do you see how those sound exactly the same? Okay. Let's do another one. What happens when I start with the percent? Okay, so let's start with the percent. Let's start with 61%. Okay, remember, when I went from a decimal to a percent, I moved it to the right 2 places. I moved the decimal to the right 2 places. So now I'm just going to work backwards, right? And that means I'm going to move my decimal back 2 places, and I'm going to get 61 hundredths, okay? So 61 hundredths, I hear it here, 61 hundredths. I should also see it here. Percents are out of 100. So if I have 61%, it means I have 61 hundredths. Notice here, 61 hundredths, okay? Let's try to sneak one more in here, and then we'll go to a new page. 61 hundredths. Let's do another one where we start with a percent. Okay, but what happens if my percent is over 100%? Like 143%. 143%. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start here. And remember that percents, to get from a decimal to a percent, we move the decimal over to the right 2 places. So in order to get to a decimal, I'm going to go to the left 2 places. And I'm going to get 1 and 43 hundredths. 1 and 43 hundredths. And that makes sense because this is over 1. 100% is exactly 1, so 143% should be greater than 1. What does that mean for my fraction, though? Listen carefully. 1 and 43 hundredths. 1 and 43 hundredths. 1 and 43 hundredths. Okay? All right. Let's go. I need to go to another page, and that's fine if you're still on the same page. And I am going to create my table still because I'm going to do a few more examples. Notice my lines aren't perfect, but that's okay. So we have fractions, decimals, and percents. Okay, fractions, decimals, and percents. So now we're going to try another one where we're starting with our fraction, okay? We're going to start with our fraction, and it's going to be 2 and 4/7. 2 and 4/7, okay? Hopefully I realize that my decimal is gonna be after the 2 because it's 2 and 4/7. But what I have to do is figure out how to convert 4/7 to a decimal. And this time I'm going to use division, okay? So go ahead and put in your calculator 4 divided by 7, okay? Now, hopefully we have 2, and when you do 4/7, you get a whole bunch of numbers, but let's round it to 5/7. It was 2.571 something, okay? So we have 2.57. In order to go to a percent, we're going to move over 2 places, and I'm going to get 257%. And that makes sense because 1 would be 100, 2 would be 200, 3 would be 300%. This is 2 and 4/7, which is 2 and 57 hundredths, which is 257%. Okay, let's try another one. What if I had 5/6? Okay, if you have 5/6, okay, and I want to convert that to a decimal, I probably also want to use division. Okay, so go ahead, put that in your calculator and tell me what you get. Oops. Okay, you could have left it as 0.833 or 0.83. Let's change that over to a percent, move the decimal 2 places to the right, and I would have 83 3/10%. Okay. Let's go ahead and continue working with what happens when I have a decimal. So let me draw my bar here. We're almost done, friends. What if I had something like this? 8 is in the thousandths place, so this is 8 thousandths. 8 thousandths. Okay, if I move the decimal 2 places to the right, I end up with 0.8%, less than 1%. Okay. What if I had 363 thousandths? 363 thousandths. It's a fraction. It's a decimal. Listen to what I'm saying. 363 thousandths. 363 thousandths. Okay. Move your decimal 2 places to the right, and you get 36 3/10%. Okay. Let's do 2 more. Let's do, oops, I need to extend my lines. 2 more. Okay, we'll start with our percent. What if I had 71 2/10%? Okay, remember, move the decimal 2 places to the left, because to go from decimal to percent, we multiply by 100. To go from percent to decimal, we divide by 100. So I come over here 2 places, and I get 712 thousandths, because the 2 is in the thousands place. 712 thousandths, it's a fraction, it's a decimal, 712 thousandths. And you could simplify that fraction if you wanted to. All right, last one. What if I had 3/10%? okay? Less than 1%. I'm going to move the decimal back 2 places. In these empty spots, I'm going to have to put zeros. So that means I have this number, which is 3 thousandths. The 3 is in the thousands place. It's a fraction. It's a decimal. 3 thousandths or 3 thousandths. Okay, so this is how you convert fractions, decimals, and percent.